Mhm.
I think my laptop is a bit slow today. Take that. Oh,
All
yay.
right.
Okay. Okay, so hello everyone that will be watching this afterwards. My name is Miriam Zakaria. I'm a final year veterinary medicine student, schooling at the University of Ilorin, Nigeria, and I'm the current International Veterinary Student Association, University of Ilorin president, and it's a local chapter under the IVSA Global. With me here today is Lisa Buren. I hope I pronounced that right. And
Yeah, more or less.
we'll be having a short interview. I started this series with the hope that we'll be able to kind of like hear from different people from all over the world, and notable people that both veterinary students and veterinarians themselves that have kind of like achieved in whatever they are doing, and to just kind of like hear their experience and yeah, motivate anybody that is listening to this to learn from them. So we'll start the interview now, and we'll start with a little bit of introduction. So can you tell us a little about yourself?
Yes,
And
of course. So, as Mariam introduced me already, my name is Lisa Buren. I'm currently a seventh-year veterinary student at Utrecht University in the Netherlands. 7 years, a bit complex there. Technically, studies is 6 years, but due to me being so involved with IVSA over time and working alongside my studies, I take longer to finish my studies. So I'm actually still studying. At this moment, I'm currently the chair of the IVSA Alumni Network, so that's also a bit strange. Not graduated, but I am the chair. That's because we experience that if the chair is not graduated, they usually have a bit more time for the other tasks combined with IVSA, so I'm picking that up. I'm also the past chair of SCOVI 4 years back, so I've been SCOVI chair very long ago. I'm past president of IVSA the Netherlands, and I've been delegate to over 10 events for IVSA right now. So I've been around for a while.
wow, that's like very interesting to know. And you have so much experience when it comes to IVSA. So
Yeah, it's scary at some point. Like people refer to me as grandma sometimes.
it's actually fun to meet people that have kind of like been in IVSA for a very long time, and it's kind of like hear their experiences, especially when they talk about things like the symposium, especially the physical ones. Unfortunately, all the ones that I've attended are actually virtual. So thank you for the introduction. So we'll start by what are the best resources that have helped you along the way? So, you mentioned some positions that you've held, and basically, school in general, what are some things, some resources that have helped you to this point?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on what you consider to be a resource, because technically a resource can be a study book, and like I can recommend whatever study book I use, but do I ever open them? Maybe sometimes. I think what helped me most in vet school so far is not per se using particular resources such as study books or particular websites. Like there are a lot out there. Like there are so many that you can use, and so many these days are free to use. And yeah, that's something I worked on when I was in Scovie, that we have a library for that in IVSA. So I'm very happy that that's still growing. But I think what helps you more than anything is having friends in vet school, and while being in vet school, getting new experiences. So taking your time to experience different parts of the profession. So by the time you graduate, you know, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, and especially what you don't like, because that is very important to know. And you only do that by, yeah, just allowing yourself to have different experiences. So yeah, take your time to go to a symposium, listen to that lecture, or go and talk to that one veterinarian you think whose job is really awesome, and then ask them, is it really that awesome in real life? Because sometimes they say, yeah, I love my job, but I work like 80 hours a week and I'm kind of dead on the inside. So maybe then you know what's a different perspective. And I think that is more valuable than any veterinary textbook can ever teach you.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because there are like so many textbooks. I have so many textbooks on my system, and I can't tell you how many of them I've read. So they're just there.
Yeah,
But
and
when you
they're
can,
expensive too, you know.
but when you can like interact with people, you pick up stuff along the way, and it helps you as you grow. Okay, so another question is that you're the chair of the IVSA Alumni Network. How has your experience been so far?
So far I'm actually really happy, but that's also because I got lucky with my team. And that means that some of my team members are very experienced IVSA members. I have several past presidents of IVSA in my team. I have past arrows, past PRCs of EXCO in that team. So the people I'm working with are very experienced, which takes a lot of pressure off me because I can just ask them stuff as well and tell them, do this more or less, and they just take it. And that's very helpful. But then again, like as a chair, my job is to keep the oversight of all the projects and kind of plan ahead, like where are we now? Where do we want to go? And more importantly, what does that mean to our members? Because that is something that in the past the alumni network has really been struggling with, like what do we offer to alumni members? And I think step by step we're actually getting somewhere now, because we started with like a full new registration procedure. So we've been mapping out for all our alumni members, like what exactly is their area of expertise. So where are they working, what are they doing, what are their interests, and with that we can better cater to their needs. So we are trying to set up, for example, a job opportunities platform. So a whole platform with places where people can go look for job vacancies, because we do get a lot of companies reaching out to us as well, saying we are looking exactly for the type of person that's normally active in IVSA. Where can we find them? And that is something that we should definitely make use of if we can. And I think there is still a lot of opportunity there that IVSA is currently working on setting that up. Because we have so many people that finish vet school but still are able to contribute in IVSA in so many different ways. And I think that is something that makes the alumni network very worthwhile, because for the graduate, it basically keeps you in touch with what's happening in IVSA. So it does keep you in touch with all these big international veterinary organizations, as well as it just keeps you in touch with veterinarians around the world. So basically your colleagues in different areas, like we have now WhatsApp groups in different areas of expertise. So for example, for companion animals, people can share cases there and ask like, hey, I usually do this way. How do you guys actually do it? And what you see is that there are very big differences how people work with different cases around the world. And I think that is something that can be very beneficial to improving veterinary medicine as a whole, if we in that way can stay in touch. So I think I'm right now just taking the baby steps towards something that can be a lot more in the future. But yeah, I'm very excited to see where this is going.
That's actually very nice. And I think it's cool, like getting to discuss cases because like there was a day I was on a virtual call with someone and she was talking about newts and I've never seen a newt before. So it was kind of
Mhm.
like interesting to hear about that and about the case. So and it's fun because different animals in are more common in different countries. So you kind of like learn something, especially since we actually don't know where we're going to find ourselves. So
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And that's probably one of the challenging parts, because it's also because we're such a big organization, we have to deal with different situations in any region. And something I always try to keep in mind when I'm setting something new up is I want it to be useful for anyone, anywhere in the world. And that can be very complicated sometimes, because sometimes things are very different between areas. And that is something that as IVSA, we always try to work on in making veterinary medicine good for everyone in vet school, to make sure they have equal access to different resources. And that's definitely not always the case. So that is sometimes one of the more challenging parts of our jobs as chairs or EXCO members, for example.
I see. Then I kind of like noticed, I really can't remember where I noticed from. I think it's LinkedIn anyways, but I noticed that you kind of like the intern for the World Veterinary Association, if I'm right. So I wanted to ask, like, how did you apply for the position, and what are kind of like some of your roles that you have to do being an intern, and how's the experience been so far?
Right, so I've been an intern for WVA from August 2021 until October 2021. So it has finished. It was a 3-month internship and it was part of my studies. Because the area I'm graduating as a large animal vet. So I'm working with production animals, but I'm specializing in government and policy. And for me to specialize in that area, I needed to do an internship for my studies. Policy. And well, through IVSA, I kind of got to know a lot of people in policies. So that was very helpful for me. And I think that's where originally my interest started as well, for government and policy involved with veterinary medicine. So I kind of knew.
So I don't know if you can hear me, but I am having some challenges with.
Your microphone is off right now, but I can hear you. I could hear you just now. Just make sure the recording is okay. All right, I'm gonna type in the chat. You are muted. I could hear you just now. Right, can you hear me now? Is that better? I think your internet lagged for a bit, but hey, that is, after all, the true IVSA experience. Okay, do you want me to leave the call and come back in?
So can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. This is.
I hear you as well. Sorry for the break in connection. So I have the question about the World Veterinary Association, and I stopped hearing anything at all. So
Can you hear me now? This is better.
yeah.
Okay, then we keep it like this. Right, repeat. I'm sure it broke down somewhere along the way.
Okay, so I have that. I noticed from your LinkedIn that you're the intern of World Veterinary Association. So I wanted to ask about your role, how you applied, and how has been your experience so far. Did you get
Right,
that?
Moyam, your connection is lagging a bit. Can you repeat that question?
Okay, so I said that I noticed from your LinkedIn page that you're the intern of the World Veterinary Association, and I wanted to ask how you applied, how has your role been, and what is your role, and how has the experience been so far?
Right, got it. Okay, so I'm just gonna answer the question from the start again. So I've been the intern at WVA from July 2021 until October 2021, so for 3 months. In that period, I've basically been the direct assistant of the Secretary General of WVA. I have to imagine that the WVA in structure is very similar to the way we structure IVSA, and that's also part due to our close collaboration, that those things are so similar, which helped me a lot because I was already aware of how things worked within IVSA, so I basically translate that. Now, the reason for me to apply as an intern there was because I needed it as part of my studies. Because as my studies, I'm studying to become a large animal vet. So I'm working in the area of production animals. And on top of that, I'm specializing to work in the area of government and policy. And for that specialization, I needed an internship in the area of government and policy. And it kind of was up to me to decide what that would be. So that was very good from my school on out for me to decide what I wanted to do. So initially I started looking for something where I could learn more about legislation in veterinary medicine. And since I'm from the Netherlands, my initial thought was to do so within Europe. So to look for a European organization, because European legislation is very linked to the way we treat animals in that region. But that didn't work out. I applied for an internship at the FV, so the European Federation for Veterinarians, but they didn't have a spot for me. And that was also partially due to it being in the summertime. So for Europe, that's summer in July, August, September. So they couldn't place me. So from there on out, I just started looking at other organizations I got to know through IVSA, among which the WVA. I thought, well, that's very similar to actually what I'm looking for, but it's not as much European as it is international. So I still gave it a try. And I basically just sent them an email explaining, hey, this is what I'm studying. This is the kind of place I am looking for the internship. Would that be possible for you? Because for most places, 3 months is very little. And the reason that I only got 3 months from my school was that they needed me in clinics as soon as they could. So yeah, I didn't get much time. But the time I did get, I was lucky enough to get that internship at the WVA. So I basically had an interview with the Secretary General there. And based on that, he said that he would be very happy to have me as an intern. So I was lucky there. And from there on out, it was still during the COVID period, of course. Initially, we said that the internship would only be online. So that's a bit sad. But like 2 months in advance, things in Europe started opening up again because we kind of were in a dip of a corona wave there. So all of a sudden he said like, well, since things are getting better, I actually really want you in the office in Brussels if I can. We will pay for all your costs to move to Brussels if you can come. So in 2 months' time, I had to make arrangements to suddenly move to Brussels. Luckily, I live in the Netherlands, and the Netherlands is a very, very tiny country. So Brussels is like an hour and a half away driving. So yeah, it wasn't that far moving down. But still, like, I had to find a new place to live, and then I had to figure out like how to go from there to the office and everything. But yeah, all in all, that was a very rewarding experience. I was very lucky that I already had the chance to get some experience within IVSA, which just leadership's roles and working in international teams, because that came in extremely handy in WVA. Like, I know some past IVSA members have referred to the WVA as adult IVSA. That's actually really what it is. It's just, some have actually been IVSA members in the past, but it's very similar to IVSA in the way it works. It's just veterinarians all over the world working there. So that was very fun as well to see that how similar it was to IVSA. But also I got to deal with a bunch of different projects because they basically let me very free in that internship. They told me, like, I want you to decide for yourself what you want to learn, what you want to see. I know you already have some experience, so tell me if something is too boring for you. That's what I was told. But that was very nice, because with that, initially I got to see a lot of different things about how the organization worked. I got to see it in a lot of different meetings, and step by step I got more responsibilities within the organization. So yeah, I started out with just taking the minutes of some meetings, and in the end I was a project manager of the essential medicine list project, which is now currently still ongoing, which is basically a project to map out internationally per region what medicine veterinarians need to have access to basically do their jobs. And that can bring up a lot of discussions, as you can imagine, because what do you recommend to a veterinarian? Like, if you were a graduate, like, what would you tell a veterinarian? Like, these you need and these you don't need. And the idea behind that is to basically compare between regions. Okay, what are the medicines that are available, and what are the medicines that are available, but veterinarians do not have access to, for example, due to legislation or due to supply issues? And what are the differences between regions, and how can regions help each other improve that? So a very easy example of that, for example, is vaccine availability in sub-Saharan Africa, because a lot of veterinarians there struggle with carrying vaccines with them because of the cold chain. It's very hard to keep your vaccines cold in an area where it's very warm, which makes a lot of sense. But yeah, still, like, you want those veterinarians to have access to those vaccines. So how can you help them to get access to those vaccines? And basically from there on out, because the project is still going, we are talking to veterinarians in that area, like, okay, if it does succeed, why does it succeed? And are there things in legislation that need to change in order for you to make sure you still have access to those vaccines? So it was a very interesting project, and I basically got to chair everything there. And yeah, that meant that I had to sit in a lot of meetings in a lot of different time zones. So yeah, luckily I was used to sometimes waking up in the middle of the night for meetings for IVSA. So I got kind of back in my IVSA rhythm there. And yeah, I got to do everything from Brussels on out. And that in itself was already very good experience, I'd say, to basically move out of your comfort zone and go live in a completely different area. Well, for me, it was not too far, but still, it's a whole different experience when suddenly you move somewhere where you have to speak a different language to move around, do your groceries, and also do your job. So yeah, it was a very good experience, I'd say.
Okay, I kind of like admire your courage in a way. And
Yeah, I mean, that's something I think any vet student needs to have. Like, sometimes you need to have a bit of courage, like jump in the deep, as they say, because that's how you get experiences which you thought you never had beforehand.
yeah, and it sounded like so much fun.
It was.
Okay, so the next question, how did you cope with being a student and holding position? Like, how do you cope? Do you have like enough time to read, or how do you balance everything up?
Good question. I still wonder about that every day. It is complicated. And that really depends on the situation, because in some situations you simply do not have a choice. And that happens. And the thing is, what I always find very important for myself is to prioritize. And how do you prioritize? Because exam is very important, gotta do that, cannot run from it. And on the other hand, you also kind of want to see your friends and your family, because they're also kind of important. Maybe you do not have time for that. And that is something that I think any vet student runs into any part. And I think that is something that anyone has to decide for themselves. Like, where is my priority? Like, is it okay for me to maybe not read all the books my professor recommends, because I know my professor is ridiculous and wants me to read 300 pages every day? Sometimes you gotta accept that that's just not gonna happen. Sometimes you're gonna decide for yourself, okay, if I just read the summary or the important points, I won't have any trouble to finish that class either way. And then I'll still have time to see my family, which is also nice. And that's very hard. And that's something you gradually learn throughout that school, is like, hey, how do I prioritize different tasks? Because all professors will be asking me to do everything at once. And actually, that's more or less the same as it will be in practice, because then you'll have clients, and those clients will also want everything all at the same time. So I think in that sense, a veterinarian is the ultimate multitasker. And that's something you very much learn through the way vet school is structured, because it forces you to make decisions on that. Like, okay, this is more important than that, and this patient will die if I do not go there first. That kind of is how it goes. And I think for me, I also decided that I kind of started with IVSA my first year. And I know in that sense I'm very rare, because not many first year students start with IVSA. And through that, I gradually got more involved. Like, I started out joining exchanges, then I went to an international event, and from there on out, I never stopped. And that was because for me, IVSA was such a rewarding experience, and I learned so much there that I decided, like, this is something I want to be part of being in vet school, because what I learn in IVSA is so valuable to me, and I very much enjoy being in IVSA that I do not want to not give it time. Yeah, and sometimes that meant making hard decisions. And then I say hard decisions, and then people in Utrecht at home always laugh at me and they said, yeah, you skipped your public health course so you could go to South Africa. That's what you did. And yes, that is what I did. But that also meant I had to do that course a year later, in a time that I had no time. So yeah, that means you gotta make decisions there and sacrifices. And that means that I'm still not graduated after 7 years. But in those 7 years, I managed to get so much more experience than some of my peers do, that already right now, I sometimes notice, hey, I already know things because I already learned that through IVSA. And oh, in some senses, I'm ahead of some of my peers in the program that may not have had put that much time in joining student activities and joining different lectures. And I think that is a benefit, not only to you, but to your future employer as well.
Yeah, I actually think IVSA has like so many benefits if you kind of like, grab it and make the best out of it. So being the president, like, local chapter is just like 3 years, so we're still kind of like growing, and it's kind of like hard sometimes convincing people that, okay, you actually stand to gain a lot from this association. So, but honestly, with the little time I've spent in IVSA, I've gained a lot, and I wouldn't trade it for anything else in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, then another question I wanted to ask was like, what aspects of veterinary medicine do you kind of like enjoy, and why did you choose to study veterinary medicine?
Ooh, those are two very complicated questions, but I'll try to answer them. So what I enjoy right now is the area I'm also graduating in. So I really enjoy working with large animals. And that for the reason that, just generally speaking, I find the way humans interact with animals very interesting in the broad sense. And then especially how we kind of interact with that on a bigger scale. So in agriculture, and how people keep farms and keep their animals, because between one farmer and the next, there are very many differences between how they organize their farm and how they treat their animals. Some talk to their animals and give them different names, and some are like, yeah, no, I have these production numbers and this is what you're gonna look at. And I think that is just such an interesting aspect of veterinary medicine, that is something I really want to work with in the future. And then on top of that, my specialization is government and policy. So also like, how does legislation decide how our farmers are working with their animals? And I think a very big issue in there is sustainability, and that doesn't matter where you live. As a veterinarian, that is like one of the prime topics of this day and age, because it's in the little things than it is in the big things. Like, I live in a country where agriculture is very, very big. So that means it's also very, very political. And each year we have a very big fight between politicians about, no, we should close all the farms because they are bad for the environment. And then on the other hand, there are people saying, no, we have to keep our farms because we earn a lot of money by exporting our agricultural products. And I think to be able to be part of that discussion is very thrilling. So that is what I'm currently studying. But yeah, initially I didn't know that I was going in that direction at all. Because I remember when I started studying in vet school, my initial idea was, okay, I want to work with animals, and like I spent some days with some veterinarians in my area just to learn about their job and see what it was like, and I very much enjoyed that. So I was like, well, I'd like to go there, but it's very hard to go to vet school in my country because there's only one vet school in the entire country, and kind of have to imagine in scale, there are 17 million people in my country, and my country is very small. You can drive from the north to the south in 3 hours. But we also have a ridiculous amount of animals in that very small country, so we need many vets. But we only have one vet school. So each year there are 225 spots and 1,000 people that apply. So there's basically a 25% chance of you getting into vet school, which is hard. And when I started studying, that meant that I needed to get very high marks in high school. And then based on those marks, they would make selections. And then like, if you were, because we grade people on a scale from 1 to 10 in the Netherlands. So if you were 8 and above, you would be A class. And then 80% of people in A class would get in. And if you were between 7 and 8, you would be B class. And then 70% of that would get in. And based on that, they would fill the slots. Right now, that's completely different. Right now, they have a selection procedure. So they have entrance exams and personality tests, which they combine with your high school results in order to select vet students. So it is completely different than it used to be. Because with the old system, which I got into vet school with, there was also an option to say, I want to be a large animal vet. And then you got instantly selected through a different method. So they would give you a priority in the system because there is an enormous shortage of large animal vets, not only in the Netherlands, but whole of Europe. And that's mostly because most veterinarians that graduate these days are not large animal vets. Not many people want to work there anymore. And the people that are working as large animal vets are very old. And they have to go with a pension at some point in time. So that's why the government initially decided, okay, we're going to give this exception. So if people are already saying at the start of their studies that they want to be large animal vets, we're going to let them be that. But the issue is that normally when studying, you only have to decide after 3 years what kind of vet you want to be. And I wasn't sure when I started studying because I wasn't sure if I was going to get in. And I really wasn't in a position to be a large animal vet at that time because my parents are not farmers. Like I do not come from a farming family at all. And because I was so unsure about, do I want to be a companion animal vet or a large animal vet? Like I knew I didn't know much about horses from the get-go. So horses were not very likely, but I was like, well, at least I want to give myself a chance to learn about that and then decide. And I was very lucky because I got selected on the first try, to the dismay of my parents, let that be known, because my parents definitely did not want me to be a vet. My parents wanted me to be a doctor because why would you be a vet if you can also be a doctor? Yeah, not a great situation. So I went to vet school anyway. I left home. I was 16 when that happened. So yeah, that was a very interesting period in my life. And yeah, then all of a sudden I had to move to a different part of the country to go to that school. And yeah, that's actually within the first few weeks in vet school, I just happened to come across IVSA. And yeah, from the first moment that already sounded very interesting to me, like, hey, those are people that also are interested in not only what's happening in our own country, but what's happening abroad as well. And that's the part that initially got me. And then I got to know the people in IVSA, and from there I stayed hooked. And yeah, it's very fair to say that that is what became my IVSA family. Like through that, there were a lot of people before me that really inspired me. Like, hey, there are so many things I can do with this veterinary degree, and there are so many options for me out there. That's what I want to do. And I remember now kind of my IVSA mom, Emma, is like a past president. Like I remember her giving a talk when I was in my first year about what she did with IVSA, and I was like, that's it. That's what I've been looking for. And I hope that like somewhere like people are listening right now and have that exact same point, that they think, hey, I don't really feel at home, because that is a feeling that many people in IVSA are comfortable with, relate to, is that when they come to IVSA, they kind of feel that in vet school, they don't really find their own place. And they feel like, well, I'm interested in this topic, but I'm not quite sure where I want to take this. And then the moment they get to IVSA, they're like, here are the people I can understand and talk to. And I really had that experience myself as well. I really hope to give that back once I'm graduated, of course, as well. But yeah, now already.
That's nice. And you actually have like a very interesting story. So I'm hoping that anybody listening to you would also, learn
Mm-hmm.
would kind of like learn something from this interview and hopefully have more interest in IVSA because they actually start to gain a lot. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
then let's see. Okay, so what are some of I should have not asked this. What are some challenges actually like face, and how are you kind of like able to overcome them?
So challenges in IVSA or in vet school?
well, let's start it in vet school. Like maybe a course was like too difficult. Then we could always go to like each of the positions you held. What are some of the challenges you faced there, and how were you able to overcome it?
Right. Yeah, so I think by far the most challenging part I had in vet school is dealing with my vet school administration, because they are very strict and very uncooperative. So they literally tell you at whatever you tell them, why? Why do you need that? Why don't you just be normal, you know? So that is annoying. And yeah, sometimes that takes a bit of dodging around and knowing where to go and who to ask, which is bad, because I think ideally any vet school should want their students to be more involved with their profession and want to do extracurricular activities, but that is something my vet school was not very fond of. So they told me, either you do this IVSA thing or you just stop studying, you know? So yeah, at times that did mean that I did stop studying, and I'm not saying that is the best solution for anyone at any point, but yeah, at some points when I was SCOVI chair, for example, I had to stop taking some courses within my studies in order to be able to manage that. And I think that is something that is a very personal consideration you have to take. Like, is this important enough for me to delay my studies, and what are the consequences of delaying my studies? Because for example, for me, delaying my studies is going to mean not only that I will graduate later, but it also is going to cost me a lot of money, because I have to get a loan from the government to pay for my studies. And even then, I can barely afford my studies. I always have to work. So being an IVSA also meant, if it was going to delay my studies, that I had to work more. So even less time. So that has been a very hard challenge at times. And it really took sometimes like getting a pep talk from people from IVSAs to really motivate me. Like, yeah, this is worthwhile and this is what's making me happy. So it is a good decision to do this, because that is something that can be very hard when, especially vet schools being hard on you, no matter if that is due to them not allowing you to do what you want to do, but also just due to exams being very hard. It's also at those points, it's very hard to kind of take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Like, why am I doing this? And is this making me happy? And is this taking me where I want to be? And sometimes I struggle with that a lot still. And sometimes you need good friends in vet school that kind of press the stop button, or like, okay, step back. I think you're a bit tired. You're gonna have some coffee now. And I think that's really what gets you through vet school, is just having friends that do that for you. And I think that's also really where vet students have to care for each other, because vet school is not going to be kind. No, that's just not an option. So yeah, try to be kind to yourself and to others in a way you'd like it to be. And taking care of your own wellness is never a bad thing. How much your professors try to prove you different. How much your professors are like, yeah, no, I don't care about you sleeping. You just gotta be there for your patients. Sometimes you just gotta tell them no. And I think that in itself is a very important aspect of being a veterinary professional as well. You gotta know your own boundaries, because if you cross those, you can't take care of yourself, you won't be able to take care of others, and that's going to be your patients. If you are running on 3 hours sleep and you can barely focus, that's no good for anyone. And I think it's a very bad thing that we actually reinforce that to our veterinary students in the way that we put so much pressure on them that they kind of expect that this is normal, and apparently I shouldn't complain about this because I want to be a vet so bad that I'll just not sleep and study all night. And yeah, you can do that one night, but you can do that 5 nights, you know. And that's very hard. And I think that is something that we often do not pay enough attention to.
Yeah, I kind of like agree, because if for one night you actually like stay up all night, you do that the second day, you do that the third day. By the time you get to class the third day, you wouldn't be able to function at all.
You will be the one waiting in surgery then.
I think I tried that when I was in my fourth year. So fourth year, my school is like extremely demanding. So we're kind of like preparing for some series of tests, and I spent the whole night reading, using coffee and everything, and then I got to class. And I was barely able to function because I was looking at the test questions and I was trying to kind of like remember everything that I'd read the whole night. So after that day, I think I just do the little I can do. I make sure like I cover enough, and that's all for me.
Yeah.
And I can actually relate with lecturers not being kind. I feel like saying not being extremely kind, because over years, some of our lecturers do share some of their experiences of how when they were going through med school, they had to, go through a series of stress and everything, and we have to go through the same stress, which I totally don't agree with. Like, you went through that stress, you shouldn't want us to go through that stress. You should kind of like lessen our burden if possible, but hopefully our generation will be better.
Yeah, that's the plan.
So yeah, I think that for that, and I think that's kind of like the last question. So I wanted to ask something though. If, for instance, somebody wants to kind of like apply for, let's say, an internship position to work with the World Veterinary Association, is there like a particular procedure the person can follow? Do you have any idea about that?
Yes, so there is no form or anything for that. The thing they currently do is basically look at it at a case-by-case basis, because they can only have one intern at the time. So it really depends on when you want to do that and how long you want to do that, and everything. And of course, as I said, like, you can do it online, but you can also do it in person. That really depends on what exactly you will be doing. But I think easiest is just to go to the website, go to the contact page and send them an email. And like, I would give them as much information as you can in that email, because what I did is shortly explain why I want this internship, like how is that going to help me, and explain what I expect out of them from the internship, because for them that's also easier to see, like, hey, is this something we can offer you? Because it happens that those expectations do not match, and then it might not be the best internship place for you. And I think that's only fair. Like, don't only go there because the name sounds interesting, like go there because what they can offer you is interesting to you. And I think if you write that down for yourself, you already got a very good step towards that. But yeah, it really depends on the person and on the moment. So yeah, there are no guarantees. There's no selection system or anything.
Okay. And I wanted to kind of like ask, like, if someone wants to kind of like be an alumni, what's like the process they can
right.
go through?
So yeah, it's actually super easy. Like, we try to make it as easy as we can, because anyone who is graduated can be an IVSA alumni. So what you do, you can either go to the IVSA website or any of our social media. We have it everywhere. And there's just a link there to a Google form that you can fill out. So that's what I explained earlier. It's just some information about you and your interests. And based on that, we will make a registration. And then you a membership fee. So like normally you would pay that to your MO, and right now you just pay it directly to us. And that's 15 euros for a lifetime. So you pay it once and then you never pay again. So that's good. That's a good deal, I'd say. And with that, you are formally an IVSA member for IVSA Alumni, and you can just join all sorts of IVSA online activities and alumni activities. You can go to alumni events, because usually we organize alumni events together with IVSA symposia and congresses. So that's a very fun way to meet people in person as well, if Corona allows it, of course. And yeah, that's basically how it works. And then you will have access to the job opportunities we share as well. So yeah, it's very easy, and just look it up on the website or our social media.
All right. Thank you so much for spending time with us. I really enjoyed meeting you. You're a very, very fun person to interact with. You're extremely free, to be honest, which made this interview very, very interesting. And I'm sure everybody that listens to this would have like a lot of take-home message that would help them, and hopefully also encourage them to be part of IVSA, because IVSA has a lot of things to stand to gain. So do enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.